Well, good morning. Merry Christmas to everybody. Before we get into today's message, I want to remind you, you may not need a reminder of this, but anybody know what next week is? All right, this is one of those years that Christmas lands on Sunday morning. And yes, we're having church on Christmas morning. Amen? All right, yeah. It was hard. I mean, we got together, elders, staff, made the hard decision that, yeah, we're gonna have Christmas on church on Christmas morning. Just joking. Of course, we're gonna have Christmas, or church on Christmas morning, because Christmas is about who? Right. It's all about Jesus, and what better day to get together and to celebrate God sending Jesus to us. We are excited that you're here today, and we want to encourage you to be here next week. Those of you who are watching online, we would love for you to join us in person next week. There are those invitations that are still out there that I mentioned earlier. You can get one of these at the Welcome Center. Pick a few of them up. Invite somebody to come to church with you on Christmas morning. Remember, though, next week our time is a little different. We're going to be gathering one service at 10 a.m. in this room, okay? So make sure you get one of these and you're here next week. This December, we've been talking about how complicated the Christmas season can be, but no matter how complicated ours gets, no matter how complicated our Christmas gets, it's nothing close to being how complicated that original Christmas was and what those people were going through when we read about it in the Gospels. So far, what we've seen this month is we've seen the angel of God coming to a young girl and asking a complicated favor of her, right? God sends the angel Gabriel to Nazareth, to a girl named Mary, with this invitation to become the mother of the Savior of the world. Man, that's a pretty complicated favor. We saw last week a complicated faith. We saw Joseph, a man who had to exercise extreme faith to be involved in the Christmas story. And the invitation was given to him not with an appearance of an angel. The invitation was given to him in a dream about an angel. And we saw some things about his character last week. We saw, here is Joseph. He is a man that hoped, right? He was hoping that God would send Messiah. Here's a guy that knew the Scriptures. He knew the prophecies about the Messiah. And so he was confident in his hope. He was also certain that even though he did not physically see an angel, he was certain that that visit in a dream was something that corroborated all the things that Mary was telling him. All the truth that Mary was telling him. And so what did Joseph choose to do? He chose then to take Mary and her child home to be with him, and he married her, and he made that his family. Today what I want us to do is I want us to consider how complicated family can be. Any amens to that? Let's do it again. Let me say it again, and then just act like you're doing it voluntarily. You ready? Here we go. How complicated family can be. Amen. I'll edit it like that for the internet. It'll be good. Okay. So, honestly, though, how many of you have a complicated family? I don't know about yours. But man, if you would look into, I'm glad you all didn't do this in the interview process, by the way. If you looked into my extended family, man, you would find some pretty interesting stuff. Got to be careful here because my mom will get mad at me if she watches this online. So I'm not going to name any names. I'm not going to implicate anybody. I'm just going to talk very generally. But man, you get into my extended family, you start looking out to, cousins and aunts and uncles and all of those kind of things, what are you going to find? In my family, you're going to find things like alcohol and drug addiction. I don't know if you have that in your family or not, extended family or not, but you're going to find marital unfaithfulness. You're going to find divorce, and not just one. We're going to find people in my extended family that have been divorced and remarried multiple times. You're going to find that in my family. You're going to find people in my family that have spent a significant amount of time in jail. And not just for minor stuff. I have several people in my extended family who've died from things like drug overdoses. I don't know if you have that in your family or not. Like I said, my mom's going to kill me when she watches this. So it's an understatement to say that I have a family that I don't agree with when it comes to things, right? You have that? You have family that you don't agree with? Lifestyle choices, right? Things that they're choosing to involve themselves in, and you just don't agree with that. And so that puts a little bit of a barrier there between you and your family. What about political views? Anybody have differing political views from your family? All right? And it usually goes down sometime on Christmas Day, doesn't it? I don't start it, but it happens to me, Is your family complicated? And so today, here's what I want to do. I want us to begin by looking at one of the most well-known sections of the Christmas story. If you have your Bibles with you, open it up to Luke chapter 2. And you're going to most likely recognize this section as we start reading it, okay? Here's how it goes. Luke chapter 2, starting in verse 1. In those days, Caesar Augustus issued a decree that a census should be taken of the entire Roman world. This was the first census that took place while Quirinius was governor of Syria. And everyone went to their own town to register. So Joseph also went up from the town of Nazareth to Galilee, to Judea, to Bethlehem, to the town of David, because he belonged to the house and the line of David. He went there to register with Mary, who was pledged to be married to him and was expecting a child. And while they were there, are you guys doing something else back there? Oh, there we go. And while they were there, caught you, just kidding. No, okay. While they were there, the time came for the baby to be born, and she gave birth to her firstborn, a son. She wrapped him in cloths and placed him in a manger because there was no guest room available for them. Now, we all remember this, right? We all remember Jesus was born in Bethlehem, right? Why was he born in Bethlehem? Heck, he grew up in Nazareth, right? Which is totally in the north of that region. But he was born in Bethlehem. Why was he born in Bethlehem? Because a census was being taken, and everyone had to go where? Everybody had to go back to their hometown, right? Everybody had to go back to the town that their family came from. And so Joseph and Mary they both come from the line of David, which is from the tribe of Judah. And you're going to see this when you read through the Gospels. Like you'll go through the Gospel of Matthew, the Gospel of Luke. Both of those Gospels have this genealogy of Jesus. Now, one of the things you're going to come across when you start reading them is there are differences in these genealogies. Okay? And some scholars believe the reason why there are differences is Matthew's doing something totally different than Luke's doing. Okay? Matthew is listing the genealogy of Jesus through Joseph to show that Jesus has the legal right? He's a legal heir. Even though he's not genetically Joseph's son, he is the legal heir of Joseph, right? And so he has the right to the kingship because he descends from David through Joseph, right? A descendant of Judah. Luke is doing something totally different. Luke is trying to show the physical descent of Jesus from Judah through David through Mary, okay? And so that's what Luke is doing when you read through that. And so they all, both of those genealogies tell us that Jesus is a descendant of David, who is among the tribe of Judah. So you talk about his extended family. That's his extended family. Those are his people, right? And let me ask you this. Those of you who are Old Testament scholars can attest to this, right? Was that family complicated? Was that family group complicated? Man, if you look back into your Old Testament and you start digging back into the family story of the tribe of Judah, what was it like? And it was prophesied that all the kings are going to come out of Judah, right? So you think, okay, probably this is a good line. All the kings are going to come out of Judah and until the true king comes to take the kingship. Who was Judah? Judah was one of the sons of Jacob. Jacob, what's he known as being? Anybody here into your Old Testaments? Jacob, what is he? He's a swindler, right? Remember how Jacob stole the birthright from his older brother? So the complications go farther back than Judah and farther back than David. It goes all the way back to Abraham. Abraham was complicated. Isaac was complicated. Jacob is a complicated dude. And so back in Genesis 49, we read this account where Jacob is about to die. He's passing along these blessings and these prophecies upon his sons. And what does he say about Judah? It's pretty interesting. He says, Judah, your brothers will praise you. Your hand will be on the neck of your enemies. Your father's sons will bow down to you. You are a lion's cub, Judah. You return from the prey, my son. Like a lion, he crouches and he lies down. Like a lioness, who dares to rouse him? And then he says, the scepter will not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until he to whom it belongs shall come, and the obedience of the nations shall be his. Right there that's a messianic prophecy, isn't it? Right there is a messianic prophecy. So Judah is made the rightful ruler of Israel. And it's kind of weird that he's not the firstborn son. You keep reading here and you find out, who's the firstborn son? Anybody remember of the tribes? Reuben is the firstborn son. Reuben's the oldest. He should have got the blessing. But man, he's a complicated dude too, right? What happened to him? He actually wound up doing inappropriate things with his father's concubine, right? And then so what did Dad say when it came to passing out the blessing? Sorry, man, I'm not giving it to you. Next oldest is Simeon, right? The next one in line who should have got the blessing is Simeon. And then right along with the third, which is Levi, these two guys were just way too violent. Now, how do I say that? You read the story and you find out when Dinah, their sister, gets raped, what do these two guys do? They don't hunt the guy down, right? They go to Shechem, where he is from, and they kill all of the men in Shechem. What about these two guys? Are they complicated? And they don't get the blessing. But it finally does go to Judah, who is to be the ruler among his brothers, Judah. But man, here's a guy that's complicated as well. You read that story and you find out, they were prohibited back then from marrying into Canaanites, right? And so, but what does he do? He marries this Canaanite woman. He's not supposed to. Has two sons with this Canaanite woman. Both of the sons, the two older sons, both of them are wicked, it says, and God ends up killing them. But wrapped up in that story is the wife of the oldest son. When he dies, she's left a widow. And so the second son is supposed to give her an offspring as an heir, but all he wants from her is to use her, right? And so God winds up killing that guy. And so here's Judah. He's afraid to give any more of his sons to this girl, right? Because the boys keep dying. So he sends her back to her father. The woman's name is Tamar. I don't know if you remember reading this story in your Old Testament, but to kind of give you the short version of it, she pretends to be a prostitute so Judah will sleep with her and give her an heir. And so when we talk about being complicated, here's the patriarch of the tribe of Judah. Like this is the dad, this is the patriarch of this whole tribe. And Jesus actually comes from one of the twins that she has as a part of this, a man named Perez. Man, is this a complicated story? Is this a complicated family history? Even David, pretty upstanding guy, but he had some big mess ups, didn't he? Some pretty big problems in his life. He sleeps with another man's wife and then has the guy killed. He marries the woman. The woman's name's Bathsheba. The child that was born from that adultery ends up dying, but it's David and Bathsheba that the line goes through, that continues through Solomon. And you get to Solomon, and is Solomon complicated? Here's the wisest man that ever lived, and he ends his life being what? An idol worshiper. So man, if you start looking into the genealogy of Jesus, it's full of some messed up people, right? I think about the way that a lot of churches and theologians sometimes think of that teaching of original sin that's held by some churches, and I think they're totally wrong when it comes to that. There are those who believe in order for Jesus to not inherit the sin, right, that Mary had to be sinless. There's a lot of churches that believe that. Like, when you hear that term immaculate conception, they're not talking about Jesus. They're talking about the belief that Mary was immaculately conceived. That like Mary's mom miraculously gave birth to her. So when you hear like the Catholics refer to the immaculate conception, they're not talking about Jesus. They're talking about Mary. And they believe that because they have this issue with original sin where they're like, well, it's passed down. In order for it not to be passed down, Mary had to be sinless too. Well, here's the problem with that way of thinking. Okay, let's say that's the way it works, and Jesus isn't a sinner because he was immaculately conceived, and then Mary's not a sinner because she's immaculately conceived. Well, what about Mary's mom? What was she like? And what about the grandma? What is she like? Was that whole line without sin? Because when you go back through your Old Testament history, when you go back through your genealogy of Jesus, there's some pretty messed up people in this line. And if you're only doing the female line, man, there's a lot of women back there that did a lot of stuff they weren't supposed to be doing. There's women mentioned in the genealogy of Jesus that are prostitutes in the genealogy of Jesus. It was a complicated family. And there's also some just outright bad people in the line of Jesus. There's some bad people. So you even read when we get to Luke 2. And so here's the situation, right? Mary and Joseph go back to Bethlehem. I don't know if you've ever thought about this or not, but they're related to all those people. Did you realize that? Like everybody's going back to their hometown. They all are related to these people. I mean, there's a good chance. Like you don't really get him in the real story, but he's in every Christmas pageant or Christmas play, right? Like that innkeeper, right? Now, if that dude existed, who is he? He's a cousin, right? Maybe one or two times removed, but he's a cousin of Mary and Joseph. And I know everybody couldn't know everyone personally, but this is still extended family. And I'm sorry that if your cousin comes into town traveling from Galilee and she's in labor, guess what she gets? Anybody feel this way too? Right? It's all extended family. Your cousin comes into town, she's getting ready to pop. What does she get? Like, Uncle Ezra can sleep with the animals, right? She gets a room. Have you ever been treated poorly by family? You can raise your hand. We won't tell. All right, back row. Oh, it's on camera. That's right. Sorry, just kidding. Have you ever been treated poorly by family? So this, I think, is an example of that. So here is this messed up family that, if we want to talk about it, has experienced generational dysfunction. And what does God bring out of this? What does God use this to bring about? God uses this mess to bring us Jesus. God uses this mess to bring salvation, to bring redemption. And what does that tell me? That tells me that none of us have to be defined by our family history. Anybody grateful for that? None of us have to be defined by our family history, because Jesus didn't just redeem his family. Jesus wants to do that for every family. It doesn't matter what your history is. It doesn't matter what you came from. It doesn't matter what happened. Because in some of your minds you've got, yeah, Jim, but this happened. It doesn't matter what happened. And if you're listening to this morning and you believe in the good news of Jesus, you can be the change in your family. Anybody believe that? You can be the change in your family. So here's my challenge to all of us this Christmas season. Don't be so harsh because your relatives are messed up. This year, you be Jesus. When you meet with them for Christmas, you be Jesus in that group. Just acknowledge our families are messed up. You show the love of Jesus. You also make sure you're giving credit for that love, right? To Jesus. But let this Christmas be one about love, about forgiveness, about reconciliation, about restoration. Because we are in Jesus, we don't have to be defined by our family. We can define our family. We can introduce those actual physical family members to the grace of God, but also as Christians, here's something that's amazing, is we actually have a brand new family. Anybody thankful for that? So here's Jesus that comes from the tribe of Judah. Think about that patriarch. Think about all those problems. Think about David. Think about the line of David. Here's something that's amazing, and where we live right now is Jesus is the brand new patriarch of the family. And what's that family? That family is called the family of God. I think back to the Gospels where and Jesus was saying some pretty radical stuff. Jesus was getting himself into some pretty big trouble. And Mary comes to get him. Remember that story? Mary comes to get him. It's her and her other sons. They hear that Jesus is saying some radical stuff. And the teachers of the law say he's demon-possessed. So here they are. They show up. And what I think they're doing is I think they're showing up to try to rescue him out of this trouble he's getting himself in. So what does Mary and his brothers claim that he is? He's crazy, right? Not demon-possessed, he's just crazy. We're going to take him. It's okay. I think they're trying to rescue him from the trouble that's about to come. And so Jesus' mother and brothers arrive. It says in Mark 3:31 through 35. Then Jesus' mothers and brothers arrived, standing outside, and they sent someone in to call him, and a crowd was sitting around him, and they told him, "Your mother and your brothers are outside looking for you." Who are my mother and my brothers? He asked. And then he looked at those seated in the circle around him and said, "Here are my mother and my brothers. Whoever does God's will is my brother and sister and mother." In Jesus, you don't have to be defined by your family. In Jesus, you get to define your family. We need to be on a mission to help restore and redeem and reconcile our crazy, messed up family. But also when it comes to that support and that encouragement and that love and that helping one another, where can we find that? Look at the people around you in this room. We're going to sing a song of decision this morning. And if you want to start your relationship with the Lord, I implore you, don't put it off. Come to Jesus today. Let him forgive you. Let him indwell you with his Spirit. Be buried with him in baptism to rise up as a brand new creature. And then join Jesus in his mission of reconciling the world back to the Father. That's what we're supposed to do. That's what the call is. You accept that today as we all stand up together and as we sing.